Welcome back to May's wrap up. This is like a month of like a lot of DNFs, so you're going to see a lot of those in this one. I tried to get them all in this script because I wrote another one of those at the end. That way they didn't like swap around. So I'm going to start with this one with a short classic. This is Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. I actually really liked it. A lot of times when I read classics, they're just kind of, obviously the term is dated, but just despite the dated, I guess, terminology to it that makes it a bit, just a lot to read, they just aren't really something that I find myself intrigued by or interested in. But that one was, a short, quick tragedy, and just the story really hits you as it goes on, especially once the ending, really just sort of drifts to a close. And, with themes of balance, control, identity, they're very subtle, but they're well done. And I really like that. And I would even suggest that one to people who maybe wanting to be interested in classics or wanting to even try it. I really like that one. And another book I read in May is The House of Last Resort by Christopher Golden. This is my second novel by this author, and I'm glad I gave him a second try. This novel had a creepy atmosphere without overdoing it. I feel like a lot of horror can shift into like a corny, just kind of cringe, like kind of vibe. This really kept it in a territory that makes you feel like it could have been realistic. Like, this is something that really kept you grounded in the sense of that horror element that it gives you. I really like that about this book in particular. Because I just feel like anymore when you read horror or you watch horror, it's getting so out of left field that it just kind of, at least for me, it bores me. So I really appreciated about that one, where I was like, oh, this is really okay, bye. It really interested me how it kept it kind of grounded in that sense of just not going so far out that it was kind of just cringe. Another book I read was Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. So this is one of those books where the writing style was very different, and I liked the writing style. And I would like to read more of this author in particular. But that book, for one, it needs to be approached by any reader after you have looked into the content warnings. It's very heavy topics, and it's approached in a manner that I think some people might find some difficulty when you read it. So I definitely feel that you need to, study every content warning and make sure that you know what you're getting into. It is very deeply disturbing, and it's an incredibly devastating story as well. And it follows the main character's life and the traumas that are endured, the aftermath, and, how it's handled. But the issue is you get about a third of a novel, and then the plot takes a turn, and in that I feel that you kind of get lost as the reader. Not only does the point of the book seem to kind of shift, but I feel like the dark and heavy material that you are reading gets jumbled into this mess that I feel, in a sense, those very dark and heavy commentaries that it was making, it lacks a bit in the last third to quarter, where you're like, why did we take all of these very serious, sensitive topics? Why was this used for this ending? It felt a bit much to use these forms of commentary to say this. And I feel like sometimes we have to be very thoughtful in the way as a writer approaches things. And I feel like sometimes as a writer, maybe we shouldn't use certain topics if that's what we do at the end. I feel like maybe we should be more proactive in our approach if, when we write things. And sometimes those types of books don't do them correctly. And so that's why I think, if you're going to read things that are that dark, make sure you read the content warnings and make sure that you're prepared going in so that you don't get, harmed reading those things. The Tusks of Extinction by Ray Nayler. I love The Mountain and the Sea. It was one of my all-time of last year, I can't remember when I read it, favorite book, probably just like in general, or like favorite book. So when I saw this, and I saw, as you see, it's a very small book, I was like, I want to pick it up and I want to snatch it. It's not that it wasn't good. I've noticed this author does think pieces as, I guess, his style of writing, which is great. I think we need more authors that really dive into, especially like ecological think pieces, and that seems to be kind of what his style and approach is. However, I do think that book in particular lacks a lot of the magic that The Mountain and the Sea has, and I don't want to necessarily like put one book over the other when it's like the same author, but when I got that book, it was because I was so blown away by that book, The Mountain and the Sea, that when I read The Tusks of Extinction, it made me feel a bit let down that that's all I got out of something so small, because it dragged. That is such a short book, and for something so short to have that much drag to it and so much kind of fluff, I was kind of shocked by that, because The Mountain and the Sea, I have it somewhere on my bookshelf. I probably should have dragged it out to show you. It's quite a large book, and it did not drag. I felt like everything that was in such a large book was there for a reason. It was very good. So for that to have a lot of just kind of meh to it, I was surprised by that. But it's still a very good book, and I do suggest people read it. I was just kind of, I guess, a little let down from going from one to the other. But I'm very interested in reading anything that author writes. Another book that I read in May was The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I think that's how, if I mispronounced that, I'm so sorry. I have always been interested in wanting to read this. I've heard other people who've read it speak on it and say that it's an interesting, like, strategy thing, just historical context wise. So I was like, I'm going to try it. When I was finished reading it, I was like, okay, strategy is interesting. I feel like I'm not much of a military or really like historical person per se. So for me, I was like, okay, strategy, interesting, cool. But if you were like into military or into like, I guess, strategic values of historical stuff, that would definitely be like more up someone's alley. But for me, I was like, that's cool. I didn't get a lot of like what it was putting down. So it just kind of like went, whoo. Okay. First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. I have seen the mixed reviews, so I'm happy that I'm not necessarily like the only one who feels this way. I feel like that book in particular could have had so much potential. Like, it had like a cute little premise, things like that. But for as long as that book was, I felt like the entire time I'm waiting to be wowed, only for it to have fallen incredibly flat. It had a full cast of, like secondary characters, which, especially for like romance books like that is, I like a cast where it's like more than just like, the couple, because that, to me, that gets boring kind of fast if it's just that focus. But like, even with that full cast of characters, they feel incredibly underdeveloped. I feel like even the two main characters are incredibly underdeveloped. And then, I don't feel like this is really a spoiler because, hello, it's a romance. They kiss fairly early into the story. And from that point on, the story just devolves into like a very poorly paced romance, ruined by a very unnecessary miscommunication trope. And I'm not into miscommunication tropes. I'm not into like the third act breakup, so to speak, that, you know, is used a lot in romance novels. I'm not into that story usage. And this book used it in a way where I feel like it's like, okay, yeah, they used it. It was kind of meh, but I can sort of see it. This book specifically, a singular, like not even 2-second conversation. In fact, I'm not even want to say a 2-second conversation, a literal 2 text message conversation, like a back and forth 2 text could have fixed this problem. And to me, like, that is why I feel like the whole like problem, everything that this like whole like center of issue for first time caller surrounds really falls so flat for me that I just could not have cared less. And I was so close to DNFing, but as you'll see through this video, I DNF'd so many books this month. I was like, I'm going to push through. And I truly wish I hadn't, because it was not worth it for me. Another book that I read that I did enjoy was The Three-Body Problem. I should have looked up how to pronounce this author's name before. And I don't want to butcher it, but this is such an incredible book, and I intend to continue the series because it is long and thicker, and it literally looks like a textbook, but this was so good. I can also say with my full chest right now, the amount of math and science in that book, I'm just going to say I believe you, because it went here. I thought I was smart, and then I read books like that or Project Hail Mary, you know, certain books that go like really high sci-fi, and I'm just like, I can't do calculus. Why are you throwing these types of things at me? Please don't. But despite all that, great. I really like what it's trying to express, and the author really had a lot of very serious things to express throughout the novel. And I recognize a lot of, you know, like the types of things it's trying to, you know, explain, especially like ecologically and like government wise, things like that. But I do feel like a lot of the points kind of get a little bit muddled from time to time, because the way the author does some of the dialogue, it's like exposition, like it's a lot of it. Or like, I just feel like sometimes the point is like, it drones on so much. You're like, okay, I got it 3 pages ago, but it's very good. I can see why it got a Netflix adaptation. I don't have Netflix. I don't pay for Netflix, but I would like to watch it. Sell hussies. But I am very interested in getting like the second book to read that, because that was really, really good. And also like the I Am But a Bug. I also need to be much smarter than I am, because that book is great. Another book, both a really good book, but also it's a duology. It became such a letdown. Anatomy by Dana Schwartz. This was almost a 5-star. I literally, and again, if anyone who knows me when I read YA, like any genre, but I feel like if it ends up kind of like in the YA territory, it's hard for me to like it. But I really, really enjoyed Anatomy. It was so good. You sympathize with Hazel, the main character, because despite the time period, it's just, she you know, this woman, she's a very young woman, and, you know, she's going through like all of this like man-dominated field, medical field, but yet she's really not helpless or hopeless. She's going to push through and like through her struggles and stuff. But my one issue was kind of like the ending, and, you know, I'm not going to like spoil it, but I do enjoy, regardless, that the book makes you enjoy it so much that you want to go like right into the sequel. And I did not own the second book, but my Libby had the second book as an audiobook ready to go. So I went right into it. And that's where like my enjoyment of that book ruined. in my opinion, that should have not been a duology. That should have just been a standalone. Yes, it does end on kind of like a cliffhanger. That would have been better as like one of those types of like books where it's like a cliffhanger, but you kind of like have your like open interpretation. That would have been better as one of those types of book and never had a second book. Because when Immortality, the second of the duology, comes in, as a conclusion, it was such a letdown. There was no reason for like a love triangle. They make Hazel go from like the first book, she is like a very strong, fairly independent woman for like the time, things like that, into just useless. Like, she's not even really the character that you learn from in the first book. It's just horrendous. And the characters that you kind of meet from the first book and then new characters you meet in the second book are just pointless, or like not even themselves, if you know, for the first. And yeah, it went from me loving the first book to being like, I'm giving away the first book, I'm not even going to buy the second. There's no reason to keep it. It made me absolutely hate it. I was like, no thanks. Another classic, I think they're considered classics now, Dune. Good lord, what do you have to say? But to be honest, despite that much words and like, I don't know if you can even see it, the print being so small, it was still pretty good. Like, I will say, like, I do like the old book, the old movies, and I like the new movies that they've done. But I've never actually read the books. So I was like, I've got to read the books. Like, if you like the movies that much, you might as well, like, watch them or read them. So, I'm going to be transparent. I did try to read that book last year for a book club. Couldn't do it. It just, my eyes made all the words, like, jumble together. I couldn't do it. So, my Libby had it available, and I listened to it while, like, you know, trying to read it, and that made it like so much easier for me. And to be honest, I enjoyed Dune as the massive epic that it is. It is hard, at least for me, to follow it physically, but when you listen to it, I feel like it's worth the read. I can see why it is so widely like revered as like a good sci-fi book. I will say though, because despite like to me, that was like a 4-star. Like, I rated it 4 stars. I think it's like a good, massive book, but it's good. However, I went on to read Dune Messiah. It's a little smaller. It's fine. I know that like there's the 3 books. There's like that one, this one, and then Children of Dune. This to me is just like an expansion of the lore. Like, this is like expanding the universe, expanding the lore. It's a great vibe, and then like you get to like, without like spoiling it, you kind of see where like things move to, and like where like the political stuff goes, where some of the people go, what kind of occurs, and things like that. So this is like a really cool expansion. But I feel like Dune in and of itself is like the story, and anything after Dune is just kind of like extra. Something like this was okay, but like I didn't really see much of a point after. Like, it didn't have the same tone. It didn't really seem all that interesting. Though I will say, like, as a side note, I think the best line, because I've read, like I said, those 2, and I have read in June now, Children of Dune. The best thing I've ever read out of the entire Dune trilogy, because I'll only read the 3, I have no interest to read any more, was I Have No Eyes. That was probably the funniest thing, if you have read Dune, and you'll know why, out of Paul's mouth. Like, why would you say that? That's so funny. I also, like, read some manga. I try to read, like, things other than books. I read both volumes of Sailor V. I love Sailor Moon. I'll always love Sailor Moon. And I wanted to read the Sailor V. Cute drawing style. I think one of the best drawing styles out there for manga is the Sailor Moon, Sailor V, all that. I just think her style is so cute. I love the, like pulling aside Sailor Moon, I love seeing the, like, Sailor V, Artemis, like, you know, seeing, like, what they were doing before the actual story. But it does make you, I feel like anyone who kind of knows like the story of Sailor Moon, it's like, that's cute, but it makes you kind of wish, why did we not get that, but for like the outer Senshi? Like, that's cute, but like they were doing like a whole thing. Like, I think it would be cute to get like a couple of books like that, please. Speaking also of non-book reading, I read Star Wars Legacy of Vader 3 and 4. I mean, I don't know what to say. It's still just like Kylo Ren doing Kylo Ren things. It's literally like just, they're each like 20-ish pages of just like silly little stuff. It's cute. I like it. But yeah, I think it's cute. Let's see here. Yeah, The Butcher. I really, really liked this cover. This is one of those books that I got solely based off of the cover. I think it's cool. And it sat on my shelf for a really long time. And if you follow me on TikTok, and I think I've said it on some of these like videos, one of like my big things this year is getting through my physical TBR, because I have tons of books that have been sitting on my shelf for a really long time, and I've just not been reading them because I had gotten like a multi-year like reading slump. So things have just been sitting. And now it's like, I gotta read these or they're just gonna sit forever. So these are one of those things where I think like I like bought it, and they've sat there, and now I've grown and I've gotten older. And I think it's out of my wheelhouse of like wanting to read it. The idea behind the book is interesting, don't get me wrong, but the world building lacks. You can tell that that is someone's first novel. It just, the way that the verbiage is like there, it just, nothing really pushes the envelope. Like, you cannot have the topics that are in there. Like, I know that if I say some of the like keywords that are in that book, this video will get flagged, but like you can look that book up. But yeah, like for that subject matter, it's just, the envelope is not pushed like at all. So quite frankly, it becomes boring. Like, you have like all of these like topics, and then you don't use the topics really. Yeah, it just becomes very boring. And then I just feel like at the end of the day, the author would have really benefited to have explored, at bare minimum, like world building, because it's not necessarily set in our world. So like, you have like these like tidbits of like, okay, so why is this like this? Why is this like that? And you get to the end of the book and it's like, none of that's answered. So it just feels kind of lazy. And yeah, I kind of wish I had DNF'd that, because it was a waste of time. Now, another book. I know a lot of people love this book. I think like Babel by Kuang, I think this is one of, for me, this will be a modern day classic. This is something I can say with my full chest. This will be a modern day classic, period. Anyone who thinks differently is out of their mind. However, I'm going to critique it because it is incredibly long-winded for no reason. The message is there. It is a masterclass on expressing viewpoints on classism, bigotry, otherism, racism. It knows how to say what it needs to say and how to do it perfectly. It is doing it in a way that is, like I said, it will become a modern day classic for how it says what it's saying. But the pacing is so atrocious. I don't know how it got past an editor without getting shrunk down, because every time it gets to like anything of interest, the pacing goes from yes, another 100 pages of pointlessness. You don't even get to anything of interest until like nearly, probably like 55% into this book. That's multiple hundreds of pages of just honestly droning. And again, when it gets to the points it's making, it is truly doing it the way that it needs to be done. But it is an incredibly, like, difficult read for what the material is handing, in a way that it makes you feel like you are almost doing homework. And I think that's like the one thing that I find very interesting about that author specifically, is she is such an academic. She makes her work academic work. And I find that very interesting, because I think that's how she loses a lot of readers. And she has something to say that is very important, but she needs to gain those readers. And that's like the critique that I have, is she's not going to gain the readers when all of her work is just going to be quite literally that, academic work. But that book is truly, I can see why it has so many mixed reviews, but that is a literal modern day classic. Now, on to, literally, I'm going to be honest, the rest of these books are DNFs. Starting with The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I loved the movie from when I was like a teenager, with Christina Ricci in it. So I was like, I'm going to read the story. Apparently that book is not like just Sleepy Hollow. It was like all the other stories. I was like, cool. A lot of spooky stories from like a long time ago. No, I literally went to just read the Sleepy Hollow, and there was verbiage. And again, I understand that like back then, like a long time ago, there's certain thought processes, things like that, that we don't agree with today. I'm still not going to read that. DNF'd it immediately. The Book Eaters. I just could not get into that. Couldn't do it. It's separated into acts, and I was nearing the end of the first act, and I was bored. It was not interesting, and I was thinking, I think there's like three or four acts into that. I can't remember now. I remember looking, and now I can't like for the life of me think of what I remember. The characters were incredibly one-dimensional. There felt like the plot was barely there, and honestly just lacked. It was an interesting synopsis, but that was honestly where it stopped. Okay. I have hair in my mouth. This is just a no. I'm sorry. I read Wildfire. I know I read these all out of order, and people will probably be like, well, that's your problem. They're not meant, like, I looked it up. Everyone says you don't have to, so I didn't. I read them in what interested me. Boring. Again, I think I have like a thing, but it's like every time I see like a playlist before like you're about to read, it's like, and yeah, but like the writing style for me, and again, I tried, but Hannah Grace's writing style just screams, I'm trying to be book talk famous. There's no effort. It just screams, let me get to the spice. And for people who like that, that's fine. I feel like people who enjoy spice, enjoy your spice. I'm happy for you. I need more to my book. And I think that that's also perfectly fine. And that's why I DNF'd it, because I just need more. Next is Wayward. I'm going to be honest. I think, again, this is like my year of like exploring. What do I like? What do I not like? What is just not working for me? This reminded me of The Lost Apothecary. Just like literally. That's why I literally DNF'd it, because it reminded me of Lost Apothecary, because Lost Apothecary bored me to tears. It was one of the worst books I think I've ever read in my life. And when that was literally following the same like step for step code of Lost Apothecary, I was like, I'm good. I'm bored. I'm good. I'm not wasting my time. Stories I told my dead lover. Again, I was a sucker for a pretty cover. These are all just a bunch of short stories by the same author. And I was like, I think it would be nice to break it up, like a bunch of books with like a bunch of like short stories. I got through, I think it was like three short stories, and every single one of them bored me. And I looked up the author, and I realized this is like her first time, if I'm not mistaken from my research, that she did something other than YA. And I was like, I think that's the problem, is this is just not working for me. I think the tone is not something I'm enjoying in that sense. I think it is kind of coded a bit YA. The husbands, again, I was a sucker for the cover, and then the plot just sounded kind of funny to me. It was so, like, maybe that's my fault to say it's repetitive and that's why I DNF'd it. Meanwhile, the plot literally talks about husband after husband coming down the stairs. Like, maybe that's on me. But, like, I feel like at some point in the 300-page novel, we do something other than swapping out husbands from your attic. I guess not. Come with me. Okay. This is a problem in the horror industry. I don't like books that are in the horror section, tagged the horror section. Like if you go on, like, I use Storygraph, but like if you go on Goodreads or Fable or whatever you use, everything about this is horror. This is not a horror book. This is a thriller. This is honestly like a cold case kind of thing. I don't like cold cases. I don't really vibe with like thriller books that much. I got like probably like 50-60% into this, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. There's no horror. I'm bored. And if the horror is like a twist at the end, I'm going to be mad because I'm so bored. It's like, it's a boring book to me because there's nothing happening, and I'm like, I feel bamboozled. So I DNF'd it because it was very like run of the mill cold case. Everything was very predictable as well. So like, it just, nothing got me. So I just DNF'd it. The Witch's Heart. Now, not only was this an incredibly juvenile take on Norse mythology, because I've read other stuff, Norse mythology, this was incredibly cringe in the sense of, like, I've read other ones where it's like, oh, you can tell that they have like a like idea of a certain like Norse god and they're beefing it in their brain to be like, you know, that's fine. I don't care. We all have like our fanfic ideas and it's fine. This is so obvious that someone watched Marvel Loki, enjoys Tom Hiddleston, and was like, I'm gonna write that. Again, that's fine, but it's so blatantly obvious that that's just like Tom Hiddleston Marvel Loki fanfic that it was just kind of, it was like uncomfortably weird to me. I didn't like it. And also, like, all of that aside, like retelling aside, Marvel Loki aside, you as an author can like write your female characters with a spine. Like, girl, get off the ground. Like, I could not stand that. Again, the same complaint of the other one, of the wildfire one from like another video. The writing is just, if you like it, that's fine. I just don't understand, for me, how this ever got popular. Like, I did not get past like 2 chapters of this specific one. It's just, I don't like the writing. I DNF that one the fastest. I don't understand how that's the one that got her popular. I just don't understand it. And I know for a fact that is an author I will never pick up again. But I'm glad she's getting her money because, girl. Oh, yeah. The Wren and the Holly Library. I could not get into that book. It was incredibly juvenile. And it also reminded me of The Mortal Instruments, which I literally could never get into. Not when I was younger, like, not like in my young 20s, things like that. It was not something for me. I've seen some other people who have said that like the Wren and the Holly Library was something for them, but it did not work for me. The Shadow of the Gods. Okay. I've seen a lot of people have it on like their TBRs, or they really enjoyed it. Okay. If you are a fantasy author, I just personally feel like a part of your job writing a fantasy world is world building. Like, unless it's like set like urban fantasy, like, oh, it's in like New York. Like, again, I just talked about Mortal Instruments. It's literally like set in the world. The Shadow of the Gods does like zilch for world building. There's like no world building. It throws you in and it's just like blood, guts, gore, glory. And it's like, okay, cool. That's fine. There's no world building along the way. They just kind of like expect you to be like, figure it out. Just like use your brain to like make the landscape, make up the world in your brain. Here's like the creatures, the characters. You got this. And like, sure, if you're like an avid fantasy reader, I'm sure it works for you. And like, I've read a lot of fantasy. It was fine. But like, I just feel like it was just really lazy writing. And I was also just really bored that it was just like, it was constant back-to-back fighting. And it didn't work for me. Like, I just feel like when the author is relying on me to know about Norse mythology, when the author is relying on me to do the world building, when the author is relying on me to do everything, but then there's like really nothing at stake. It's just fight, fight, fight. And it's not really expanding past that. I'm not interested. So I skipped. From below. So there's a glaring lack of knowledge on topics that are supposed to be in this book. So like diving, underwater knowledge. I feel like that's kind of like needed information when you are going underwater. Like, I feel like this is really needed. So that made it really hard for me to immerse myself in the book. So with that being said, as you saw that book, it is a very big book. So you are dealing with like a very long-winded story to begin with, and it's getting bogged down with like really big, long chapters and long descriptors and no knowledge of what is going on, and you can feel it. And so you're not getting fully immersed. And for me, I just DNF'd it. I could not get myself immersed enough to care. Which is sad, because I liked another story I read by her. I liked it. You could not pay me to read this. It was a rambling mess. No. I know a lot of people liked it. I've seen it, but no, you could not pay me to care. And I don't care. I don't want to read that. I have I think it's like the superhero one that she wrote, the little duology. I have that and I plan to read it, but like, I hope it's not wrote like that, because I will DNF that too so fast. That was horrendous writing. Last was A Botanical Daughter. Sucker. Do you see this? I was a sucker for this. And the plot sounded so interesting. And honestly, again, that's where it stopped, was a really cool plot. Because as interesting as the plot of that, the synopsis really, because the plot was poorly executed. It was so bland. The characters, there was no development of characters. In fact, the characters were so pointless that they blended together, including the main ones, not just the side characters, the main ones. Like, you go into another chapter and they're talking together and they're conversating, and I'm like, who are we talking to? Who are we? Like, it gets to a point where I'm having to like go back, and I feel like if you cannot distinct after multiple chapters, who is who, what are we doing? It's bad writing. And on top of it, I feel like the author did not go in with a concise plot or a concise idea, because it just, with every chapter, it feels like we're winging it and we're not really focusing on what is at hand. And it makes you as the reader very confused. And I just did not enjoy what was going on. And so I DNF'd that as well. I was not enjoying my time, and it wasn't for me. So that was everything that I read, and a lot of DNFs for May. But as always, if you enjoyed it, give me a follow, subscribe, whatever, or like the video. I'll be doing another for June, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.